Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I am back once again with John Dayton as we pursue some of his other questions and answers from all of you. So please welcome back John Dayton. The other thing I get asked about a lot is like props and set pieces, like where those came from. And my understanding, I'm guessing, was a lot of it was sourced out of the Warner Brothers department, unless they didn't have it. Is that correct?
Gosh, they had so much, Judy. Did you never get to go over there and tour through? Oh my goodness, it was phenomenal. And you know what I wanted to keep when the show was canceled? The parrot. Do you remember that parrot?
Where was the parrot? Was it in the
Oh my gosh, Judy, really? It was on. Okay, so we're in the kitchen looking through the living room.
Right.
There was a post and a shelf.
Right.
And that parrot was always
okay. Wow, I'll have to look in a scene next time, kind of where the telephone ended up being later, or right by there, and where John's
wasn't the
desk
phone
was.
down on the desk on the other side.
Yeah, but we would sometimes stand by the post to be on the phone.
The parrot was there. I would have loved to have had that.
Yeah, people asked, did we take anything? It's like none of it belonged to us. It was going back into stock. It didn't even belong to Lorimar to give it to us. That wasn't, and because we were canceled, between seasons, it wasn't as if we knew this is going to be the last episode and there was an opportunity to say, hey, I'd really love to have this or that, or, I'm sure those pieces have continued to be used, the set pieces and the props in subsequent shows and stuff.
Probably. I haven't seen the parrot.
Somebody snuck the parrot off.
Yeah, we should.
It went to Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes, right. It went to Disney.
Yeah.
If you missed a mark, what did you do?
Well, if they didn't immediately go cut,
right.
Then I would just figure it wasn't so far off that they weren't able to frame it up and adjust the focus, and I would just keep going. Usually if you missed a mark and it was critical, they just cut right away, because otherwise we're wasting film.
Yeah. Oh gosh, no.
Yeah.
That was expensive. That film was expensive.
Yeah. It was sort of like flubbing lines. If it was like a fumble, but you could continue the scene, then you always knew, well, they might just do a pickup of the line. But, if it was just like, I can't even think of words, then a lot of times it was like, I'm sorry, we need to go back. But
I'm up. I can't. What?
Yeah, didn't happen very often to me, but there were any number of scenes where I sat there doing a scene. I have no idea what I say next, and I sure hope by the time the other person finishes talking that it comes to me, that something comes to me. It's like, just hopefully this will happen, and most of the time it did, because we're learning them so fast, and you only had to know them for short periods of time, so it wasn't like learning a play where it was just in there. It was just someplace in the files up there. You wrote a comment, which was very helpful. Thank you. But for anyone who didn't read that, again, a question I get asked a lot is safety in the mill. When I spoke with Eric, we talked about it a bit, but I know you had some useful information about that.
Yes. Well, first of all, let's start with, would you believe that OSHA has guidelines, but the production company is responsible for the safety on the set? So for example, on the show, and I think I mentioned this, the company could have said, or you guys could have said, I'm getting splinters in my hands when I'm climbing the ladder to the second floor. Or stepped on a nail, or any other thing that could have possibly happened on the set. That's Lorimar's fault for not, seeing to that. And a lot of times it was the assistant directors, like me eventually, who bore that responsibility.
Because we really pretty much, I get asked about it because of the sawmill, and Eric said that the wood wasn't real.
It was soft wood.
It was, that it was sided with like balsa wood, so it would cut through easily. and that it was really more him and Richard and Ralph, sometimes Will, that actually worked with that, but that the ones who were less comfortable with it tended to do other things in the mill than actually run wood through the blade. But it was an open blade.
It was a real blade. It was an open blade. And I do remember I brought some of that wood into the mill. And when I brought it in and set it down, that saw was going. And we had no eye protection. I mean, that was the other thing.
Yeah.
But getting back to the safety officer, you are not required to have a specific safety person on the set. It's your decision as a producer. Do I spend the money on having him stand around all day? And even today, I was surprised because I did a little research on it after Rust happened, and it is not required. So that is the producer, the company. It's their obligation to make sure that safety, that safety standards are followed. I remember when in Ferris Wheel, remember when Eric had to do that climbing?
Yeah.
God bless him, he did a lot of it on his own, about halfway up. But then we had a stunt double do the balance of it. And now Eric had, as far as I can remember, he had no ropes or anything to protect him from falling. Yeah. Of course, the stunt person did, but there was no safety officer there. I was there, but nobody. Yeah. What if they fall out of the...
Well, I mean, Cammie talked about, she said she fell out of the treehouse one time.
Really? I
don't remember that at all, but yeah, I mean, stuff did happen. As I recall, like the whole thing with us being barefoot early on, they stopped letting us be barefoot because somebody stepped on something.
Oh my God.
Stepped on a nail or something. And so then it was like, okay, no more bare feet on the children, put shoes on them. I mean, I didn't really care, if we didn't have shoes on, and it was always kind of hit and miss. Sometimes the older kids wouldn't have shoes on, but Cammie might have shoes on. And but then it sort of became, okay, everybody has to have shoes on. But there was all kinds of stuff on that set, nails and screws and pieces of equipment and
broken glass. I mean, all over Warner Brothers. I mean, I never got a flat tire.
Cigarette butts.
Cigarette butts all over the place. Yeah. It was, it was fun.
Yeah. But and then we would ride around in the vehicles, particularly that truck that we were all just be sitting on the back on the edge of the truck and riding along with,
bumping along. You could have been
bounced out at any time. I mean, we would keep an eye on, again, the little ones,
Yeah.
Standing on the running boards, I mean, it was just all those things that we all did in our generation when we were young. We didn't think anything of it.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the safety answer. There
wasn't. It was a little loosey-goosey. It's kind of what Eric said too, and it was a little left to the actors and what they were.
What about when you were
not comfortable
when you were walking on the roof?
Well, there were two different things that happened. One, when in the carnival where I was supposed to be walking on the roof, they put a stunt double up there.
Oh.
But it was at the pitch of the barn. And so from the cameras, can see this. On the backside, there was a whole 3-foot wide platform they built that you couldn't see. So she's walking back and forth on that. For my close-up, they stuck me on that teeter-totter up between the top 2 6-foot ladders and had me walk back and forth on the teeter-totter. Which was, to me, far less safe than being on that platform up there. If I'd fallen off the teeter-totter, I would have hit the ground. It was hard. But I remember also having to be, there was one where I was supposed to be on the roof. I was up on the roof of the house, and I was supposed to drop a wire down.
That's what I was going to say. I remember that.
Oh, and I hated that because I hate heights. And I was like, how much do I have to lean over to drop that wire down? I mean, because that was a 2-story house.
I mean, you could have slipped and fallen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They had us doing all kinds of stuff. We didn't we never thought we could say no.
Yeah.
And we just never thought to really question it. I mean, I think all of us were pretty well geared. I mean, as an actor, you're always told to, if they ask you if you can do something, always say yes. Whether you can or not. Can you ride a horse? Yes, of course. Can you ride an elephant? Of course, and then go figure out how to do it really quickly.
Yeah.
And it'll come back to bite you sometimes on things if you really can't do them. But, so things around the set, and there was always this sense that, well, you're not supposed to be difficult. You're not supposed to cause trouble. It's kind of your job. And so we didn't really think about it, getting in the cold water in Drusilla Pond. It wasn't dangerous, but it wasn't very comfortable. Standing around in the rain for hours, when you were shooting rain sequences. And I mean, it's not glamorous. It's cold, or it's hot, and it's dirty, and you're sweating. I mean, all those things.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the things I admire about actors who can really do it. Remember the scene where it was a big storm and you had to, am I thinking correctly that you were pregnant?
Yeah, it was probably the grandchild where I ran through.
And you had to wear that big weighty thing, and and it was pouring.
Yeah, they were dumping water on me. I was wearing like a heavy wool sweater that kept getting longer and longer as it got wetter. And they turn those, the big rain birds on and just dump it on me. I was soaking wet. Then they'd cut and somebody would stick a blanket around me. Well, that doesn't help when you're already soaking wet. And the padding from the pregnancy pad was getting heavier. It was 4 hours one Friday night that I was soaking wet shooting that stuff.
I was there. I remember that. And the other thing about rain is it doesn't show up easily on film. So you have to do like 10 times the force of the rain to make it just appear. And I was always aware of this as a producer. You could have the rain on your actors, and you could look down the street, and everything was totally dry. So it was only raining there. So, and you also, we had these big water trucks that would come through and wet everything.
Yeah.
Because for the look, for the look of it, make the sidewalk shiny and
Yeah. All of those things. Yeah. I mean, the same thing with the shooting day for night, because they might be able to shade it enough in the foreground, but then in the background, you can see what looks like bright sunshine and
clouds.
Yeah. It's
But you know what? I mean, there wasn't really, all you could do was, underexpose, basically.
Yeah. There was the question about the artwork. I remember that. People asked me, because Michael did not paint that artwork. Ed Graves did all of it, the Maude Gormley stuff and the...
Why didn't somebody keep that? Or maybe Ed did. I don't know, but it would have been a wonderful souvenir from that episode, to have had that.
Yeah, I don't know if he did the because there was a sketch of me in season 1 that was done in the Minstrel, where the traveling troubadour sketches me, and someone said, "Oh, did you keep it?" And I was like, first of all, I wasn't crazy about it. I'm like, it was. I didn't think it was. We're really, people can be funny about pictures of themselves or whatever. I looked at, I went, I don't think it's all that flattering. It looks like me, but I don't think I don't want it on my wall. But again, they weren't things that you thought of. I mean, they certainly would have kept it in case we ever had to go back and do a reshoot or an insert, or if it was going to get called back in another episode. I get asked about the stained glass window that they supposedly put in the grandparents' room, and then we never really saw it. We saw it in one other episode after it was first put in, and we never saw it from the outside of the house.
Give us a break.
I know. So that's the thing. And people are beginning to understand this. Like back when the show originally aired, you got to see it once in real time. And then maybe you got to see a rerun in the summer, but then you didn't see it again. And now people can stop and pause and explore things and go forward. They've seen them 10, 20, 30 times and had an opportunity, and they've seen them enough to recognize the inconsistencies in the continuity and how come this person was this age and now they've been married this long. And John had his high school reunion, but later on he said he didn't have a diploma and he had to go get his his diploma. I want to really thank John for joining me once again. Always a treat to have you, John, and I will see you next time on more Behind the Scenes of the Waltons, more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.